Hello and welcome to another episode of the Leadership Lens, where we speak with global leaders on what's trending in the ecosystem. In the past 4 years, retail strategy has undergone a significant evolution. D2C brands have emerged as strong competitors to legacy brands, reshaping the retail landscape. To talk to us more about this and what the future of retail and the future of D2C look like, we have with us Ramesh Menon, who is ex-CEO, Wingreens, and a startup mentor. Welcome, Ramesh. It's great to have you on the Leadership Lens.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So, Ramesh, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you really got started in the retail industry?
Oh, I've been in multiple industries. I actually started with FMCG straight out of campus. Worked with a couple of multinationals like ITC, Colgate, and then Pepsi. And then from this side of retail, I moved to the retail side of retail. So I moved to I was part of the startup team of Spencer's. That's when they were starting in 2005-06. That's the beginning of my retail journey on the side of on the side of the retailer. And then back and forth after that with Hypercity as a retailer and with Future Group as a retailer. And then, of course, on the consumer side with Airtel and so on. So it's been FMCG, then retail, then telecom, then retail again, and then FMCG for a little bit with Wingreens as well.
So pure play retail and various aspects of retail as well. So multiple
both sides of retail. So the front end and the sort of consumer side and the retail side.
So how have you seen the space evolve in so many years?
Oh, actually, if you look at it, I mean, it's stop and start and stop, that kind of thing. I mean, now, of course, the last 2-3 years, there's been significant change because of the arrival of e-commerce and quick commerce. Otherwise, for the modern trade retailer, it's been fits and starts. There are a lot of people who came in 2005, 6, 7, almost all of India's major, family groups and multinationals had come in, and then they all, many of them exited, and then, it started stabilizing. And then again, there was almost a restart in the industry. And then, it's swung back a little bit. And then now with quick commerce coming in, I think it's picking up again. So it's stopping, starting. So I don't think it's really got the full potential of what could be. I mean, India can be a much bigger modern retail country, although, a lot of other kinds of retail other than FMCG has really taken off. But really, I think if the FMCG space has to take off, it requires a lot more thought from the the government side and a lot more investment into putting up stores and so on.
So when you say there is a lot of potential and there is a certain future to look forward to, what do you really mean? How should this really look like? What is the future of retail looking like?
I think number one, retail will succeed and retail will become sustainable only if retail is profitable. What fundamentally FMCG retailers or grocery retailers have found is the difficulty in making ends meet. Either the margin structures are wrong, or the cost structures are wrong, or the price of property is very high. Some of these things haven't really worked, and it hasn't really resulted in a playing field which is apt for growth, right? At a stage 10-20 years back, when everybody was investing in it, it grew because of investments. Then when multinationals came into the country, it grew because of that. And then with all of that winding down, now it's really looking for profitability, and profitability comes from margins, and margins have to come from the FMCG players. It's a chicken and egg thing. So that's really what the FMCG companies are struggling with. And on the other side, the retailers are struggling with. So when will that balance come and how will that balance happen? I don't know. Now, there's another wave where a lot of people are putting bringing funding into quick commerce, right? There is a cycle to it, and it will end at some point of time. So what happens after that? So how many of them will survive and sustainably do this business? So it's been fits and starts. I mean, it goes up, goes down. So, there's another 2-3 years of, funding resulting in growth. And then after that, unless it's sustainable, it really doesn't work. And that's really been the problem. So which is why Kirana still survives, the local retailer still survives, everybody survives. Despite all of that, we've been talking about modern retail and so on.
Correct. So do you see D2C as an evolution, as trying to plug this, this kind of hole, this challenge that retail is kind of facing? What do you think are important aspects of a successful retail or D2C company or a D2C brand?
I think, the point is that D2C is working as long as it's funded by somebody else, right? And can it stand on its own feet is really the question that we need to ask ourselves. And when will it stand on its own feet? And therefore, then build a sustainable business based on that. So a lot of people have to rush into D2C today because, look at it from the brand side. I have nowhere else to go, right? If I go to a modern retailer, they have, huge amount of listing fees to pay, and entry is difficult. There are so many startups and so many new companies coming in, new brands. Retailers have limited shelf space. They can't expand their stores because rentals are very high. It's a complicated, vicious cycle, right? And so D2C, or startup brands find it very difficult to enter retail, modern retail or physical retail. And therefore, they're left with a quick and easy option of starting D2C. Right? If it was another era, they would have gone and distributed their stocks to retailers. And so they start this D2C business. Then when you go to D2C companies, because it intends, D2C, there is a cost to D2C, right? So then there is a cost that you pay for transportation, logistics, all of that, packaging, and so on, which makes it relatively less sustainable in the long run, right? So again, as long as you're funded, you're able to do it, and then you're showing growth. And then at a point of time like today, when everyone said there's no funding for mindless growth, now what does a D2C company do? Right? If they had the legs of modern retail or legs of Kirana retail or general trade, then they could have survived. But it's going to be more and more difficult because less and less funding is going into businesses where it's not sustaining itself. So the VC is actually asking questions of, what's the profitability like? Questions they've never asked before.
Yes.
It was great as long as, everybody was looking only for growth. So you could get funding based on growth and projected growth and, a target that you're setting for yourself based on, whatever visual thinking that you are doing.
So is that a point at which we say that, how important is a brand identity and a brand, a brand recall for a D2C brand? Is it possible for a D2C brand to purely stay in the digital world, in the e-commerce world, not enter into retail? Is that possible? Is that a good, strategy to have?
I think in high margin categories, it might still be possible. And I'm sure there are a lot of companies which are proven that it's possible to, or when you have a strong moat of some kind, then it's possible to have higher margins and therefore sustain the business. But even take the example of Wingreens. I mean, they had strong brands, but they're struggling today to sustain the business for simple reason that there is no fund coming in, or people are not investing in growth anymore. People are looking for profitable growth. So, and that profitable growth means then you pull back on spends. And what does a typical D2C business entail? It requires spending money going to Google and Facebook and, on the social companies, and you getting returns on that money spent. So you're acquiring customers at one, if you're spending 1 rupee, you probably get 120, 130, 140, 150, whatever. You're very good, and if your brand is very strong, you probably get a little higher. But you're still having to spend to acquire the customers.
Yes.
Right. And that's the fundamental problem, because every time you're short of sales, then you increase your budget, and then you sort of try to get more sales. And then when the money is not there to invest in that, I mean, if you run short of funds, for example, then you're back to square one. So then how do you survive only on organic growth? Or how do you survive only on brand recall and therefore the sales that entails? Because anyone who's funding you will ask you for growth beyond the so that's the chicken and egg thing. So do you invest in growth and buy growth? Or and it's the same in modern retail as well. Do you get promoted growth? So you can go to a modern retailer and say, in the normal course, your brand is strong enough, and then you do a certain value of sale. Now he will push you to give promotions, and he'll tell you, give me a 1+1 this month because your competitor is giving you 1+1, and you're a startup. You should give me, 40% margin and a 1+1. And you're blackmailed virtually into a situation where you have to give that, and then when you give that, then you buy the sale. He'll give you some sale that he's promising you, and then it's not sustainable after that, because the moment you pull that out, it's gone. So that's a fundamental problem. So however strong your brand is, it really depends on what your market size is, and what kind of part of that market are you playing in. And can you sort of balance out between various mediums or various channels of sale, so that your weighted average cost comes down and you can sustainably do it. So that's really the challenge that D2C companies are facing and will face into the next couple of years, as long as funding is tight.
Sure. Too many, I think for the consumer side also, there are just too many choices. So it's difficult for them to be loyal to anyone. When we had a Colgate and a Fresh Gel and something else, we had only 3 toothpaste. It was easy to choose.
Yeah, it was easy for Pepsodent and Colgate to fight, and all of us to take sides. But
yes,
not anymore like.
But if I have to start a D2C company today, or any of our audiences, are there any common mistakes that you've seen that should be avoided?
I would suggest don't start a D2C company right now. Let D2C just be, there should be nothing called a D2C company. You're starting a consumer company, and there are 3-4 channels of sale, right? Of course, every channel requires different kinds of investment. And because you're a startup entrepreneur and alone, probably you will first choice is to sort of go D2C, because you don't need to depend on anybody else. So the goes that way. But as long as you're only that, it's difficult to survive, right? So then you go to the e-commerce guys, then you strike a deal with them, and then you go to the modern trade guys and you strike a deal with them, and then you go beyond your current geography, and then you go to the next geography, right? And then you go from there to the general trade guys and say, okay, these are the 10 top stores in Delhi. Let me start servicing them. So you need to balance that entire portfolio of channels that you have. It's difficult to just be a D2C player and sustainably, unless you're creating a business to sell. That also doesn't really work in today's environment, because there's nobody willing to buy. Yes. But the fact is that, if you're looking at building a long-term sustainable FMCG brand, or a brand in the market, D2C is just one option and one channel, in my opinion. And this era when we were talking only D2C brands, I think will cease to exist sooner or later. Of course, it's a cycle. Again, there'll be a fresh funding round, 5 years from now, and everybody will eagerly get inside, and then create some more D2C brands, and again they'll flop, and then so if you're really serious about the business of creating a brand, not a D2C brand, then look at multi-channel business, because there are multiple ways of reaching a consumer. And you should, in the good old days when we were working with Pepsi and Colgate and BTC and so on, our objective was to make sure that we were available wherever a consumer went. It wasn't that I will be available only online and I will not be available. And all of those companies set up new brands. I was working with IT as a management trainee. We set up Sundrop at that point of time, which is the first time anybody was launching we were virtually converting a commoditized category into a package and branded category. And first time they were really investing in brand. Nobody else had really done in brand investments. So at that time, there were channels, there was some channels available. So you didn't call yourself a GT brand, or you didn't call yourself a modern trade brand. You called yourself a brand, and there were multiple channels, and you created your sales structure in such a way that you could access consumers wherever they went. So there were consumers shopping at various places. It could be a modern trade store, it could be direct to home, it could be any of those, and we try to service them. And that's the same philosophy that, that's timeless. So I wouldn't say there's anything called a D2C brand. There is a brand, and there is a product that needs to be sold.
Yes.
Right? The more branded it is, and the stronger the brand, the easier it is to sell. But more important than anything else is the go-to-market of that brand, and the go-to-market is multi-channel. It cannot really be a single channel go-to-market.
Correct. So the basic principles of creating a brand have remained the same in the last so many years. No matter how many fancy acronyms we add to it, basics remains the same.
And that's the basics that people are forgetting, actually. You suddenly find some shortcut that somebody has told you that you create a D2C brand.
Yes.
You're just creating a brand. I mean, whether you're selling samosas or you're selling, toothpaste, or you're selling dips and sauces, it's really the same.
Correct. So, Ramesh, tell me,
And,
what is... Go ahead.
So the point is that, nobody knew 2 years back that there would be something called a quick commerce channel.
Yes.
It just suddenly came upon us, right? And I'm sure 2 years later, there'll be something else that comes up. I mean, it could be drone delivered products. So if there's a drone channel, then we have to be there as well. Drone channel.
Absolutely. Yes. I wish there is a drone channel soon. So, coming to data, coming to media, Ramesh, we've seen D2C brands. So that on the brand side, we see a lot of D2C brand, which is the new age thing to do. Then on the other side, we have a lot of social media, a lot of influencer marketing that's happening. And these two are really working together as far as I see from a consumer point of view, right? What are your thoughts here? What are some effective tactics of leveraging these channels? If you're a D2C brand, if going retail is very expensive, then are there better ways of using these channels?
I think we all would have given a different answer 6 months ago, and today the answer will be very different, because everyone's seen the downtrend, and everyone's seen the winter, and people are struggling with. Everyone's seen the change in question paper. I mean, the same VCs who used to ask you for growth today asking you for EBITDA, or and suddenly you're struggling with answering those questions, right? So the same goes for marketing of D2C brands. I mean, at the end of the day, there is a message you want to convey to a consumer. In the good old days, you probably used a model, or you used Salman Khan or Shah Rukh Khan or somebody to do that. And today, the popular person or the more credible person seems to be, influencers. So you use that. So I think the most important thing is to be agile, be aware of what's happening in the consumer space around us, and therefore be willing to and able to change as quickly as possible, as and when each of these mediums or channels become available to us, and being on top of the changes that are happening in the industry. Right? So a brand that is sitting on the side and saying, this is the only way that I can do it because I've done it for so many years, or influencer marketing is the only way to do it because that's the only way that I know to do it, or I'm very good at, say, Facebook and Instagram marketing, so that's the only way to do it. And you might suddenly find that the social media channels that you were dependent on don't exist anymore. And there's no guarantee of permanency in any of these mediums anymore. So my advice to anybody is be aware of what's happening around you. If social media is the thing right now, participate in it and try to learn the best practices of that channel. And tomorrow it changes to YouTube marketing, or YouTube Shorts, or tomorrow it is something beyond influencers. One should be agile enough to make that shift and not get stuck in any fixed way of marketing. There's nothing, just like we said, there is no D2C brand. There is no, fixed channel of advertising or medium of time. Today, look at the way the IPL advertising happened. right? Last year it was something else. This year, a lot of the advertising dollars have gone into some other channel. So it changes, and if you weren't agile enough to realize that TV was going short, and maybe digital streaming was increasing, then you would have fallen short of what you needed to do. And that's really the point for D2C brands as well. Don't think that there is only Facebook marketing or there is only influencer marketing or any of that. As long as it's possible for you and available for you, do that. And as you see things changing, look at how you can make the shift. Now with AI coming in, God knows what will happen in the next few months, right? Nobody thought of all of this 6 months ago or 3 months ago, and suddenly everyone's talking AI, everyone's talking ChatGPT, everyone's talking all of these stuff. Never know what's changing, and in the last 5-10 years things have changed every 2-3 years. The channels of choice have changed every 2-3 years. So, it's better not to speculate or give gyan on any particular channel. Or particular way of doing things, because before you finish the sentence, that's expired and something else has started. So the most important thing is that learning agility, nothing else. So if you're a D2C marketer, learning agility is the key. I mean, if ChatGPT is come, you better have got your subscription and you better start using it. So and tomorrow it could be something else. So be agile. That's my advice.
Absolutely. I think exciting times that we're living in, challenging times, difficult to hold yourself as a brand. What do you think? So what I get from what you're saying, Ramesh, is that brands need to be clearly be agile, not dependent on a single channel. Be aware of what's happening around us, be very omni-channel and be very channel agnostic as such, right? So don't be dependent on one. So one of the things that, have been a part of important conversations is data and analytics and what metrics to track. For the longest time, like we said, growth was the metric, it was just a graph going up. No one looked at anything else. And suddenly we have profitability as a metric coming in, per unit EBITDA or something coming in. What are the metrics that a D2C brand really needs to track? What are the important 5?
At the end of the day, I think fundamentally, if you are doing business genuinely, it has always been unit economics, right? It's always been contribution margins. It's always been, EBITDA margins. So that's the timeless metric that needs to be there and needed to be there. Along the way, in the last few years, people forgot about it. That there was anything called, making money or, anything that, the business needed to make money. Because cash flows were unlimited and cash flows were, guaranteed in a sense, and valuations were, going through the roof, and therefore even more cash came in. And that's not fundamentally the way businesses work, and that's really the big difference. So just one metric. One is top line, and genuine top line, not inflated, not bought, not promoted. What's your real top line? And if without promotions and without buying sales, what would you reach? And most startups can be accused of, in a sense, inflating their sales and falling into the trap of buying and promoting sales, and therefore showing a picture to themselves and fooling themselves, a picture that's far better than it actually is, right? And conveying that picture to the VCs and the PEs, and therefore then creating so supposed virtuous cycle of investments and funding. So ultimately there is only one metric. I mean, whatever business you do, there is revenue, there are costs, and you need to pay for the costs, and then you make money at the end of it. There is, for every transaction, the same metric is there. It's the unit economics, or whatever of that transaction. You can't have a 100 rupee product and spend 200 rupees to deliver the product. I mean, there's no logic in it, right? Yeah. So what kind of business are you building? And it'll fall at some point of time. And there is no, nothing that you can convert that kind of an economics into a positive economics over a period of 2 years or 3 years. And there is no future that is bright, although you would project that it's bright. That's the fundamental metric. And like we discussed in terms of GTM, branding, and in terms of economics or in terms of financials, there is only one metric, which is really whether you're doing the top line and you're doing the bottom line. And I don't think we're getting away from that. You can fool yourself. You can fool some of the people some of the time. You can fool probably all the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of them all of the time. And that's really the story of the entire industry at this point of time, because, they were not fooling other people, they were fooling themselves and getting into a bubble. So there's just one metric that we need to track, or two metrics, which is top line and bottom line, and that remains eternal. And every transaction, whether it's for the whole business or for a particular transaction, it needs to make money.
Correct. So 2023 has been kind of a mirror that has kind of come up and shown everyone this is the real face. This is where we stand. These are the real marks.
The bubbles. I mean, it's like the story of the emperor's new clothes. Yeah. And people are not telling people the truth. And suddenly now, the truth is being told. I don't know whether people are still conscious about it or not, but the fact is, now they can see themselves for what they actually are. And that's the learning, for investors as much as it is for the founders, as much as it's for the industry. And for the media as well, because the media is the one that hyped everything up, right? Yes. So media is equally culpable, or even more culpable. You have these, 3-4 pages in every newspaper, talking about startups and making them celebrities, and everybody's on, fancy programs that talk about how easy it is to create new businesses and so on. And, people forget the real picture.
Exactly. I think we've had these kind of ideas coming throughout. I mean, even over the last 50 years, there are these sudden bubbles that look too rosy, and then suddenly there is a crash. So it's always happened. But we've looked at the dark cloud now, Ramesh. Now tell me, where is the silver lining? If there is a genuine aspiring D2C startup entrepreneur, what is it that they need to do?
I think,
or should they wait 5 years and then start, or should they?
I think they should fundamentally recalibrate their thinking and say that you're building business for the long term. And you look at the businesses that lasted of the startups of US startups that came into India, and most of them, or the FMCG startups of the last generation. They were all startups at one point in time. I'm sure Nestle was a startup, McDonald's was a startup, P&G was a startup. All of them went through various processes of acquiring, acquisitions and, organic growth and everything else. And became what they are today. So everybody was a startup, and that principle continues, right? If you're a startup in the D2C space or in any other space, you have an opportunity to succeed as long as you're prepared for the long term and you're doing the things right. Right. I think one thing that every startup needs to do is to make sure they're doing the right things and doing things right. Don't look for the, shortcut, easy way, and then forget that you're in the business for the long term, right? Funding is just a method to make sure your business becomes sustainable. Now, funding is not a method to make wealth for oneself. Always, that's the difference between the way the industry was built and the way the companies are getting built today. And therefore, if you're genuine about the business and you're not looking at doing the expedient wrong vis-a-vis the correct thing to do, I think you can still do a business right. And there are hundreds of businesses that are even being created today by a lot of local Indian family-owned concerns, which are doing things right, and therefore doing it in a sustainable way. They're not caught up in the funding bug, and they're investing it from your family. So when you're investing from the family and creating a family-owned business or a new brand from the family, then they're not looking at it from a fashionable fund perspective, right? So that's the real way to build businesses, and that will continue. That's not going to stop. And I'm sure there are FMCG brands being built as well as we speak. Yeah. Right, and if you watch television or any of these channels, you see genuinely built brands as well. They're not looking at either doing D2C or doing it the other way or doing it one way. They're looking at it as multi-channel, multi-medium businesses.
So the saying bottom line is building a brand has certain basics to it, has certain building blocks to it. The truth will prevail at the end of the day. Have your bottom line straight. If you
And that's not to say that you should make profit from year one. I mean, it's not about making profit. It's about being real and really understanding the journey, right? You can't spend 2 rupees to get 1 rupee of sale, or you can't, we could never do that. I mean, in the past, but today you can do that. I just have to, click a button on the computer and change my spends. So that's really why it is.
at the end of the day, all said and done, logic should prevail to business.
True, absolutely. Yeah.
That's the bottom line there. So we're also seeing a lot of legacy brands, from your ITC to your Tata to your Marico's, now going D2C.
Yeah.
The other way around is also happening.
I think they're just getting scared that they're missing out on something.
Exactly. It
It's not
almost
really.
feels like FOMO, because those channels are honestly probably not even 1% of their entire portfolio. And do you think this is an important thing for them to do? It is, is it pure FOMO playing, or is there something that they need to grow over a period of time? It's going to be an important channel.
I think at some level it was FOMO initially, and then they started buying brands, and the ones that will succeed are the ones that use their existing channels of distribution. And what's a fundamental problem for a D2C brand or a new brand? I mean, I won't even call it a D2C brand. It was D2C because it couldn't find any other channels. Is that they couldn't get access to channels. The biggest advantage that a Marico or a ITC or a Levers or any of these companies have is the access to channels. What they're able to do is place them in stores where consumers go, right? So when they buy a D2C brand or so-called D2C brand, then they need to take it and take it to store. And how well you can take it to store and how much attention you can give a new brand in that journey into stores and sustaining it in stores and so on is really the challenge that all of these companies have. And that's the challenge that they should be. I think that is the expansion of a market that or expansion of TAM that the acquisition by these companies should provide the brand. Otherwise, if they are going to remain a D2C brands after acquisition by Marico or after acquisition by ITC or Levers, then it's a pointless activity. I mean, and unless the brand is so strong that the unit economics permit them to be only a D2C brand.
Yes, but I don't think we've seen any examples of that yet.
Yeah, and even in things like fashion and beauty and cosmetics and all, you're seeing brands having to go physical, right, after starting off as D2C brands, but making that transition quickly is really critical. And I think where these companies buy these brands, that's what they need to do quickly. And it's not easy for them to survive in the physical space as well. So the brands have to be nurtured in the physical space by these large companies buying out, and that's when success will happen.
Correct. So we're saying that it's important for brands to actually be in a physical space where consumers can touch, feel, smell, look at them in the real world, and it really goes back to human basics and the common ways of buying things. So it's important for D2C brands to look at retail as a channel, pure physical retail as a channel. And it's important for the Maricos and your ITCs of the world to enable, for D2C brands that they're acquiring, to enable them to get into these spaces, right? Thank you so much, Ramesh.
For some of these D2C brands to be bought over by these large companies with good distribution footprint, and therefore give scale to the product and give wings to the product, and that's when this entire thing will work. There are entrepreneurs who create the brands, and there are these distribution powerhouses which facilitate the expansion of the product and expansion of the geographies and make it a brand. And that's how the largest brands in the world were built. All the brands of Nestle, all the brands of Levers or P&G or any of these companies, they were really like that. They were created by small entrepreneurs and then bought by these large distribution houses. And then what Nestle is today is an agglomeration of multiple brands that they acquired over periods of time, right? And that's what should happen in India as well. And these are the multinationals of the future. Having bought these small brands from owner entrepreneurs who now have the ability to scale it up and make it big. and take it international.
Correct. Absolutely. So that's the future we're looking at. That is where we see, that is the silver lining, and that is where
When you would create the Indian multinational, why should it be the multinational coming to India?
Yes.
We should be creating FMCG brands for the world. So that's really the way it should be.
Correct. With so many Indian D2C brands coming, we really see a future for that. So thank you so much, Ramesh. This has been a wonderful conversation, really eye-opening, and thank you for being so refreshingly honest. We will see you around. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.